Hi everyone, Albedo has finally arrived and I've waited for this character ever since I've read about him on Sirius's voiceovers. Just a disclaimer before anything else, Albedo is obviously designed as a sub DPS or as a support character given his low auto attack values and skill mechanics. Having said this, no one's stopping you from using a character that you like. In fact, any character in Genshin Impact can be a carry, it's just that some are clearly better like Klee and Duluth and they will obviously make your life easier in Abyss. But if you've decided or are curious on how to build Albedo as your main carry, I hope that this video will help you in some way. Probably the most important aspect in building a character is team composition. Among the various teams I tested, this is my favorite for an Albedo main, especially if you have a C6 Noel. Given the cooldown, his burst is virtually spammable and very powerful. Therefore, this team composition revolves around boosting Albedo's burst damage and giving him lots of energy. Since Albedo is your main carry, you would want a damage-centric sword rather than an energy recharge sword, but it really depends on your artifacts. But we'll talk about that later. Therefore, depending on your artifacts, you might need to rely on your teammates to help you with energy recharge. Fischl's Oz fits this role perfectly and would provide constant elemental damage to proc Crystallize together with Albedo's E. What's more amazing is that Fischl's passive, Lightning Smite, can be triggered by Crystallize, dealing additional damage to opponents. To further speed up Albedo's energy recharge, you may use a second Geo character. In my case, I use Noelle because not only is she a healer, but also because I have her at C6. I also chose her because of Enduring Rock. Although Ningguang would be great for Albedo for an additional 15% geo damage and 48% attack from the Thrilling Dragon Tails R5, Noelle's shield would ensure that Albedo would always have a shield and will not only rely on picking up crystals for the additional 15% attack damage. Moreover, MiHoYo has publicly announced recently that they are working on improving Geo Resonance and Geo Shield, so it might be a good choice to invest on another Geo character. But we'll not dive deep into that today because all of those might still be changed in the future. The last slot is highly dependent on where you want to go. For general explorations, I recommend using Bennett because not only is he a fire character, but his elemental burst will greatly buff Albedo's burst. Aside from that, if you do have him at C6, which can happen given that Bennett is in Albedo's banner, he can convert Albedo's attack to fire and is very powerful when coupled with Oz to proc Overload. But be very careful because against smaller enemies, Overload will cause an explosion displacing the enemy, and given that Bennett's burst AoE isn't as large as Albedo's E-skill, it might only work best against big enemies. Right now we still don't have and we might not have an option to deactivate a constellation, so really think about it if you want to unlock Bennett's C6. Another powerful support character that you may want to use is Xingqiu. If you've watched my previous videos, you already know that I've been maining Xingqiu since day 1 of Genshin. Xingqiu not only provides Hydra damage, but his rain swords can deal massive damage as well. Together with an elemental mastery focused Fischl, this team can reliably apply electro charge to enemies. Now, if you want to focus on physical damage, you would want to have a superconduct team. This isn't really my playstyle because I really like Albedo's burst and so I'm more focused on geo damage. But if you want to go this route, excluding 5-star weapons, the best in slot is an F2P weapon, Prototype Rank 4. It fits Albedo perfectly because normal and charged attacks increase his attack and defense by a certain amount. And Albedo's Transient Blossom scales with defense, so the longer your Albedo is DPSing, the stronger his Transient Blossoms will become. One downside of this build though is that since you're focusing on physical damage, your Geo damage will significantly decrease if you remove your Geo Goblet. Therefore, your burst damage may not be as high unless you have really good substats on your artifacts or you have Albedo C2. I think the full potential of this build can be unlocked by Albedo C2. From here on, I will be sharing some fun Albedo builds that I really enjoyed using. These builds are very situational though, so take extra precaution. Anyway, Genshin Impact is supposed to be fun, so who cares as long as you're having fun, right? First is the Geo-Shatter Permafreeze team. You already know Xingqiu's and Chongyun's Permafreeze combination, but you can actually add Albedo to the team. In this setup, you will be relying on Transient Blossom's Geo damage to proc Shatter. I prefer this than using Chongyun's Greatsword because when I use Chongyun to shatter, the freeze time is so short because every attack that he does shatters the frozen enemy. With Albedo, since he's using a sword, shatter will only occur every 2 seconds. Adding another card character, Diona, Chichi or Kaya, will give you the Shattering Ice buff. With this buff, your crit rate is increased by 15%, but take note that it only works for enemies affected by Cryo. Aside from the crit rate from the Cryo Resonance, having 2 units of the same element in a team will make it faster for Cryo energy to refill. Therefore, you can further utilize this setup by equipping the XL set or Noblesse Oblige on Chongyan. Since he's Cryo and you'll be getting more Cryo energy, you can spam his Elemental Burst and so Albedo will greatly benefit from the artifact buffs. You can also swap Xingqiu with Barbara to have access to the Thrilling Dragon Tails buff, which is 48% attack. However, take extra precaution when fighting Cryo enemies because of Barbara's elemental skill. The last team that I want to share is a duo between the Alchemists, Sucrose and Albedo. In this setup, Albedo is like an avatar because this focuses on infusing Albedo's sword with different elements. If you have Chongyun and C6 Bennett, or even just a C0 Chongyun, you may want to try using a 4-piece Archaic Petra. Now, a 4-piece Archaic Petra is usually used for a support Geo character, but in this team setup, you can use the 4-piece Archaic Petra to buff Albedo himself. Since Chongyun's E can convert Albedo's attack to Cryo, when Albedo picks up a Cryo Crystal, his normal attacks will essentially increase by 35%. You can then use Sucrose or Venti to reduce the enemy's elemental resistance, making your Albedo's attack deal more damage. Personally, I prefer Sucrose for this team because she can use the Thrilling Tails and come on, they're both alchemists, so why not? Now for weapons, I won't be talking about 5-star weapons because unfortunately I still have no experience with 5-star weapons, so I can't really give comments on how good they are, but just looking at their base stats I think they're very powerful. Okay, for 4-star weapons for a main carry Albedo, I really like using the Black Sword. Now the weapon that you will choose, if you have the luxury to choose to begin with, really depends on what Albedo build you want to make. Since I want my Albedo to be the main carry, I need crit stats and my artifacts are not godly enough yet to stand alone without a crit weapon. Also, with the Black Sword, you can build Albedo without a healer because the Black Sword can heal the user upon landing a crit. And if that's still not enough, it increases damage dealt by normal and charged attacks by 20% at Refine level 1. So if you happen to have the Black Sword or is planning to get the Battle Pass on 1.2, and you're planning to make Albedo as your main carry, you might want to consider getting the Black Sword. Now if you don't have the Black Sword, my next suggested weapon will be the Favonius Sword. The Favonius Sword will help Albedo to use his burst more often, not only because it has energy recharge as its secondary stat, but also because every crit hit has a chance to generate an elemental orb for Albedo. If you're going to use this and is lacking in crit substats, I highly recommend to run a Cryo Resonance team to take advantage of the increased crit chance. The Sacrificial Sword, although having an energy recharge as its secondary stat, is in my opinion not that good for Albedo. The reason is Albedo's E skill already has a very low cooldown, 8 seconds, and so the Sacrificial Sword will have a better mileage for characters like Xingqiu, not Albedo. Okay, what if you want to use F2P weapons? The thing with Albedo is he has great options for F2P swords. In fact, the Festering Fang might be the best in slot for a support type Albedo. Although it doesn't have a clear advantage for DPS Albedo, it's still excellent because it's for free and we might have a chance to max refine it. And for the current event, it's clearly the best sword even if you're a DPS if you are in Dragonspine. For physical damage Albedo, the prototype rank core is excellent, especially if you have C2 Albedo. On the other hand, Iron Sting is very situational and might not be a good sword for Albedo because currently, Geo characters only have access to Crystallize and Shatter reactions. If you want to build Albedo Geo-Shatter team, this might be good but it's very situational. So, here's my overall ranking for a main carry Albedo. I'd say that the Black Sword is superior because it has crit rate secondary stat and also increases your normal attacks while healing you every 5 seconds. The Favonius Sword or the Festering Fang will be my next option, followed by attack percent swords. Again, Prototype rank core is an excellent choice if you're building a physical Albedo, especially if you have C2 Albedo. Festering Fang on the other hand is the best in slot during the event when you are in Dragonspine. For artifacts, I'll be blunt here, it really depends on your RNG and how lucky you are with the substats. However, it would be good to have at least a 2-piece Archaic Petra for the additional 15% geo damage. My Albedo builds all have at least a 2-piece Archaic Petra because Albedo's kit mainly revolves around dealing geo damage. If you want to focus more on his burst, I recommend equipping a 2-piece Archaic Petra and 2-piece Noblesse Oblige. I use this with the Albedo Fischl duo because, as I've said earlier, Fischl can give Albedo lots of energy to spam his elemental burst. If you want to try out an infusion-focused main carry Albedo, I recommend a 4-piece Archaic Petra set. The 4-piece Archaic Petra set will not only give 15% geo damage, but will also give 35% additional elemental damage to all, take note, all party members when an elemental shard is created through a crystallized reaction. So even if Fischl is not on the field, she can still receive 35% electro damage if Albedo picks up an electro shard. However, one downside that I've experienced while using this setup is that you have to be very aware of your surroundings because your elemental shield can easily be replaced by another element if you pick a new shard. The 35% damage bonus doesn't stack, so you can only have one elemental damage bonus at a time. This was clearly an issue when fighting against slimes. Personally, I farmed for both sets, so I do have a 2-piece Archaic Petra plus 2-piece Noblesse Oblige set and a 4-piece Archaic Petra set for my Albedo main. They have very similar substats, and with that said, the 2-piece Archaic Petra plus 2-piece Noblesse Oblige set was easier to use and was more viable in most chambers in Abyss. However, I still use my Alchemic Infusion Albedo setup for fun and is very viable outside of Abyss and maybe a few Abyss chambers. Now, if you don't have a lot of resin like I did when I was starting out and can't farm specific domains, you might want to use the Gladiator's Finale in the meantime. However, I still recommend farming for a 2-piece Archaic Petra as soon as you can if you really want to main Albedo. Moving on to the main stats, it's pretty straightforward for main carry Albedo. My recommendation is to go attack, geo damage, crit rate, or damage depending on your substats and weapon. For secondary stats, personally, my priority first is crit rate or damage, followed by defense percent, then attack percent, and last would be energy recharge. However, if an artifact doesn't even have crit rate or crit damage, I personally wouldn't upgrade a 5-star artifact past +4. Overall, maining Albedo is very fun and flexible. You can build him in a lot of different ways, and again, artifacts, weapons, and team composition depend on one another, and that at the end of the day, it is up to you how you want to build Albedo. If you're the type of player who wants to follow meta and have the most powerful character in the game, Albedo might be better off as a support character in your team, specifically for Klee and Child. Thanks for watching this video. I hope this video helped. If it did, please like this video, comment down below, and subscribe to my channel. See you on my next Genshin video.